Hello everyone. Today we're diving into a story that has quietly electrified fans across Turkey, the kind of story that unfolds in whispers and glances rather than headlines. It centers on two of the country's most talked about stars, Akın and Ebru, and a decision that, if true, reshaped the terms of their entire relationship. In a place where actors' private lives are dissected nearly as closely as their most dramatic scenes, the report that Akın laid down a unique condition before taking the next step with Ebru didn't just trend, it stirred something deeper. A slow mourning turned into a frenzy as curiosity swelled around the most intimate corners of their love. For years, Akın and Ebru have been a shorthand for elegance and synchronicity. On red carpets, a hand placed just so at the small of the back. On trips that left no itinerary behind, just the hum of airport terminals and a borrowed hat pulled low. In rooms without cameras, the kind of quiet only two people who understand each other can share. Yet sources suggest that behind the polished glow was a quiet bruise from the past, one that started guiding the rules of their renewed romance long before anyone suspected a second chapter was even possible. Those who claim to know say the seed was planted during the period when they chose to part ways in silence. While the public speculated, Ebru channeled everything into her work, international campaigns, fashion shoots with a cinematic edge, collaborations that pushed her beyond the expectations people pinned on her. She appeared on runways like a secret had been folded into her posture, still and strong. Meanwhile, staying faithful to his introspective streak, Akın disappeared to Spain, where mornings carried the smell of oranges and old churches. He walked stone alleys that emptied into bright plazas, listening more than speaking. He sat on the Andalusian coast at dusk, where the horizon felt less like a line and more like an invitation to think. They were separated, yes, but never fully severed. Even apart, thin threads remained. Deleted chats that lingered in memory, a playlist they had curated now shuffled in solitude, photos tucked into quiet corners of phones that weren't ready to forget. There were nights when a message was typed and erased and typed again, and though it was never sent, its echo hung between them. Then came the evening that changed everything, when fate nudged both to the same charity gala. The cameras didn't catch much, just a moment, really. But in that moment their eyes locked with an intensity that felt like a match held to a candle wick that had never truly gone cold. The room seemed to inhale with them. After that, the whispers began to travel, late-night calls that pressed past midnight, laughter that spilled through the phone until dawn washed the city pale. There were murmurs of secret weekends in Bodrum, where the water's edge kept confidences and the wind off the sea swallowed their words. Clandestine dinners where the menus were less interesting than the way their hands found each other across the table. They weren't flaunting anything. In fact, the absence of spectacle became its own message. But for Akın, one rule stood apart, immovable. Sources say that during an intimate dinner, the sort with soft light and the scent of something careful and slow simmering, he placed a condition that would become the bedrock of their rekindled love. If we're going to build this into a life, he said in essence, there's one rule. Don't break it. No coy reveals, no carefully staged riddle posts, no letting strangers into the raw places. It wasn't a plea for secrecy as a game. It was a promise to keep the heart of what they share unexposed. Privacy wasn't a mood, it was a pact. No soft launch slideshows or cryptic captions. No telling interviews where the answer is meant to be coy but ends up a headline. No dissecting the tender parts that can't survive in the glare. After years of watching every look be analyzed and every silence interpreted, Akın had stopped treating quiet as absence and started treating it as protection. He wasn't running from attention so much as defending the small fire that gives a relationship its warmth. Ebru, who has navigated the public gaze with grace and steel, understood the line he was drawing. She recognized that a boundary could be a shelter rather than a cage. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like relief. Love didn't need an audience to be real. And the more they laid this rule down between them, the more it felt like a promise to each other rather than a defiance aimed at the crowd. The proposal, according to those who claim a vantage point, carried that same intimacy. There was no skyline fireworks or social spectacle, no sharp-edged diamonds paraded for likes. Instead, there was a letter. Long, handwritten, unslick, the ink slanting where his hand blurred the lines. In it, Akın traced their path with care, the delight and the friction, the hours of not speaking that ended in soft apologies at 3 a.m., the quiet walks when their words ran out but the companionship didn't. There was one line, in particular, that echoed far beyond the paper for those who heard it repeated later: "I want to love you without cameras, without scripts, without an audience." Ebru's response wasn't about spectacle either. It was the kind of yes that happens gradually, when tears catch at the edges and a promise takes shape softly. She vowed not only to love him, but to shield the shape of that love from the fingers that would try to pull it apart. Their story, she said, would be theirs to narrate, not anyone else's to remix. Since then, the two have deliberately slipped into low profile. Rumors have floated of an intimate ceremony outside the country, perhaps somewhere in the Tuscan countryside where the hills turn gold near evening and vows sound like prayers whispered to the olive trees. They aren't confirming anything. They aren't denying anything. The silence is its own statement, and for once, the lack of details feels like a luxury rather than a void. Observers claim to have seen them in small cafes where the cups clink and the staff learns your order by the third visit. They've been spotted leaving the same gym minutes apart, hair damp, faces flushed, the kind of ordinary that famous people rarely get to own. Private breakfasts on balconies overlooking the sea, where the only witness is a gull mapping slow circles overhead. Across these glimpses, a pattern emerges, closeness that doesn't beg to be witnessed. The love is there, unmistakable in the ease with which they move together. It simply does not need to perform. What has surprised people most is how assured their rhythm seems now, as though the rule that might have looked severe from the outside has become a kind of refuge. With Akın steering them away from the glare, they've been able to build calm where spectacle would have invaded. Trust, where doubt might have flourished under commentary. Authenticity, where curation would have made everything feel like a scene. It's easy to forget how much work it takes to keep something real when you could so easily make it shiny instead. The sources say the reduced public presence has been less about hiding and more about choosing what matters. They've reclaimed time, the kind that isn't chopped into posts or interrupted by notifications. It's the difference between living a story and managing a brand. The spaces that used to fill with noise have been cleared so that the only thing echoing there is the sound of two people returning to each other, over and over. That, they say, is what they wanted most, a home built from eye contact and inside jokes, not from applause. Of course, the world will always wonder. That's the cost of loving in view of a million curious eyes. Is Akın right to place a shield around their bond? Is Ebru right to step behind it with him? Or do public couples owe their audience a more generous window into their private rooms? In a way, the questions miss the point. They aren't refusing to be seen. They're refusing to be consumed. There's a difference. If you've followed their journeys, you know both have had to learn how to hold themselves steady in a windstorm. On set, their professionalism has always been the headline. Off set, their restraint has become its own story. A quiet pushback against the idea that love isn't real unless it's constantly shared. And yet, the glimpses we get feel almost richer for their rarity. A look that says more than a caption could. A laugh that wasn't meant to be documented. The things that stay unposted often glow the longest. What comes next? The rumors won't stop, they never do. Some say Tuscany. Some whisper about an island where the sky is a deeper blue than the sea and privacy is not a request but a guarantee. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's a small garden behind a borrowed villa, or a terrace where two chairs face the sunrise, and promises are spoken so softly they don't echo. Whatever the truth, the outline holds, they are building something that doesn't need the world to nod along to thrive. For now, they continue as they are, a pair sighted at the edges of public life, choosing when to step into the light and when to allow the moment to belong only to them. When you catch them together, you notice the small things, how he listens all the way to the end of her sentence, how she reads the micro shifts in his expression and answers them without a word. Their chemistry hasn't dimmed, it's ripened. Less sparkler, more candle. Less show, more shelter. And if you're wondering whether the rule feels heavy, consider the glow it seems to have fueled. Constraints can be freeing. A boundary can be a way of saying, this, right here, is sacred. The more they honor it, the more the outside noise fades, and the more the core of what they have stands up on its own. That's what love often needs to survive the bright lights, not a bigger stage, but a room with a door that closes. Tell us what you think. Is Akın right to guard their story from the spotlight? Should couples who live in the public's imagination open more doors, or is this the grown-up answer to a world that never stops asking for more? Share your thoughts below. And if you want to keep up with stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community here at Secrets Behind the Stars, where we look for the heartbeat hiding beneath the headlines. Because if their journey says anything, it might be this: love can expand in silence. Protected from unnecessary noise, it grows in ways that feel deeper and truer than any performance. It doesn't need an audience to bloom, it just needs two people who choose it every day. And for Akın Akinozu and Ebru Şahin, the choice seems clear: no cameras, no scripts, no audience. Just them. Stay close. This story is far from over, and when the next quiet chapter turns its page, we'll be here to read it with you, softly, carefully, and with the kind of attention their love has earned.